You don't even have enough for rent this month, and you're out here feeding a guy who doesn't even say thank you. Her co-worker snapped, loud enough for half the diner to hear. But Kayla didn't argue. She just packed the soup, just like she did every night for 6 months. Same time, same bench, same silence. No one knew who the man was. No one cared, but she did. That was until one night when a fire broke out, and a child was trapped inside. The man walked straight into the flames, and days later, when 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the diner, that same man stepped out in full military uniform, stars on his shoulders. Every soldier behind him stood at attention. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Fall Ridge, New Mexico, a small town with 1 diner, 1 high school football team, and 1 blinking traffic light that had been stuck on yellow for the better part of a year. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your dog's name, but not your dreams. The sunsets were long, and the silence was even longer. At 7:12 every night, a girl in oil-stained sneakers walked down the cracked sidewalk of Elm Street, passing the overgrown lots and the Shutter hardware store. Always carrying a paper bag, she didn't dress like she wanted to be noticed. Worn hoodie, ponytail, 1 headphone in, not 2. Her name was Kayla Monroe, 26 years old, and a waitress at a rundown gas station diner off Route 19. She had a tired kind of beauty, born from late nights and early mornings, from bills paid late and promises kept. It was the kind of beauty that didn't show in selfies but did in small kindnesses. Kayla lived above a pawn shop in a 1-bedroom apartment with her 14-year-old brother, Noah. Their mother had passed away from heart failure 2 winters ago, and their father had been gone much longer than that. Since then, Kayla had taken on everything: rent, groceries, school meetings, scraped knees, heating bills, and making sure Noah had a winter jacket that didn't come with holes. Her life followed a loop. Wake up, make coffee, pack leftovers, serve truckers and construction workers at the diner, count every tip, walk home, repeat. But there was one moment in that loop that never changed. Just before she turned onto Baylor Avenue, across from Lot 23, there was a wooden fence, its paint long peeled away. Behind it was just empty land, weeds, and rusted tin. Beside that fence, every single night, sat a man. No one knew his name, and the neighborhood kids called him Ghost. Some said he used to be a miner. Others said he wandered in after the fire at the mill. He looked like a shadow, old army coat, graying beard, skin weathered like the desert itself. He didn't beg, didn't move, just sat, hands in his lap, staring straight ahead like he was waiting for something that never came. Most people crossed the street, some muttered, a few pied him. Kayla noticed the first time she left something. It wasn't planned. She had a ham and cheese sandwich left from her shift. She was walking by, and he looked thinner than usual. She didn't say anything, just stopped, crouched, and placed the sandwich on the sidewalk near him. He didn't flinch, didn't look. But when she turned back half a block later, it was gone. The next night, she brought a thermos of soup, then a pair of clean socks, then a half-used blanket she kept in her locker for emergencies. She never expected thanks. He never spoke. But every time the offering was taken, that was the beginning of a quiet ritual that lasted 6 months. Sometimes she left fruit. Other times, leftovers from the diner. Before every shift, Kayla would pack her leftovers, labeling them with a marker. Tuna salad, no mayo or meatloaf, plus mash, still warm. One night, she even left a cupcake with a single blue sprinkle on top, just because. He never responded, but once, when she left the food, she added a note. Take care, it's getting cold. She returned the next evening to find the same napkin, folded neatly into a triangle, placed exactly where she'd left the bag. Another time, during a heavy downpour, she stopped by late, her jacket soaked through. To her disappointment, he wasn't there. She almost turned away, but something inside her made her leave the food anyway. When she came back the next night, he was there again, and on his lap sat a familiar plastic container, rinsed and returned. Kayla didn't know why it mattered so much. Maybe it was because he reminded her of someone who'd fought something invisible. Maybe it was because his silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, as though it carried too many names. The other waitresses at the diner teased her. "You feeding your ghost again?" One joked, "You know they don't tip, right?" Another smirked. Kayla just smiled. Let them laugh. This wasn't about charity. It was about dignity. She'd been there, eating crackers for dinner, so Noah could have something real. She'd walked home in winter, without gloves, because she'd given hers to someone who looked colder. She didn't want applause. She didn't want to be a saint. She just didn't want anyone to feel forgotten. And that's what the man looked like. Someone the world had forgotten. What Kayla didn't know, what no one knew, was that he hadn't always been a ghost. He had once been General Haydenroth, commander of the 5th Special Forces Group. He was a decorated veteran, a father, a husband, someone who had once spoken to rooms full of officers with steel in his voice and conviction in his hands. That was until the day the chopper went down. It was supposed to be a routine transport, but a storm rolled in too fast. Communications were scrambled. The crash was violent, fire-hot. When Hayden crawled out, half-burned and bleeding, something in his head didn't come with him. The memory loss was brutal. Faces blurred, names vanished, orders turned to whispers. There was no ID, no dog tags, no fingerprints on record. His last mission had been Black Ops, classified. He wandered for weeks, then months. Each step took him farther from the man he used to be until he ended up in Fall Ridge, sitting by a fence, staring at a world that no longer recognized him. But somehow, something stayed. A fragment, a reflex, a discipline of stillness, a sense buried deep in the wreckage of his mind that he had once known honor, and then came the girl, the one who didn't flinch, the one who left food without fear, the one who made him feel seen, without ever asking to be seen herself. He didn't know her name, but every night when she placed a paper bag near his side, something flickered in him, a flicker of duty, a flicker of memory. She didn't know it yet, but that girl, with her paper bags and late-night walks, was about to do what no military doctor, no combat psychologist, no government operation had been able to do for 3 years. She was going to bring General Roth back, not with medals, not with orders, but with kindness. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that just shows up every night, without fail. And in a world that had forgotten him, she remembered. For the next 184 nights, Kayla Monroe never skipped a stop by the fence. The town of Fall Ridge barely noticed. Life went on. The gas station flickered under burnt orange neon. The high school team lost another championship. The same old men drank the same bad coffee in the same booth at the diner. But for Kayla and the man by the fence, something steady existed. A ritual. Some nights, she brought chili in a foam cup, covered in 2 layers of cling wrap. Other times, it was a peanut butter sandwich with a note that said, "Be safe, it's windy tonight." When her paycheck was late, she still brought something, even if it was just a boiled egg and a slice of bread. He never asked for anything to end 6 months. Not a single night was missed, neither by her nor by him. They exchanged exactly 0 words, but somehow they communicated all the time. One Thursday evening in late October, she left a thermos of hot chocolate alongside an old paperback she had found in a charity bin. The next night, the thermos was clean and the book was dog-eared to page 47, placed neatly exactly where she'd find it. She smiled. She never learned his story, but she saw his effort. He never left trash, never asked for more. He folded every napkin she left behind, replaced the lid on every container, and when kids spray-painted the word loser in angry red letters on the fence, someone had scrubbed it off by dawn. Kayla had a feeling it wasn't the city. Winter approached. Kayla bought a second-hand blanket, rolled it tight, and tied it with string. She left it one night, without saying a word. The next evening, she saw it resting on his shoulders, the corner tucked gently under his chin. She had never seen him sleep. He always sat, eyes open, watching, but the world around her began to notice. One afternoon, Jen, a co-worker at the diner, leaned over as Kayla wrapped up a leftover burrito. "You're not taking that to him again, are you?" Jen asked. Kayla didn't answer. Jen scoffed. "You don't even have enough for rent this month, and you're out here feeding a guy who doesn't even say thank you." Another day, the night manager at the gas station muttered as Kayla packed soup into a container. If you've got extra food, maybe bring it to the break room. You're not a charity. Even her landlord, Mrs. Collins, commented when she saw Kayla return one evening without her gloves. You're too soft, girl. One day, you'll have nothing left to give. Kayla didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just kept showing up because she knew something they didn't. She wasn't giving out of abundance. She was giving because she understood what it meant to feel empty and how much it meant when someone noticed you anyway. But then one brutally cold Wednesday evening, everything changed. Her shift had run late, and she was exhausted, but she still walked the same path. The moment she turned the corner, she froze. He wasn't alone. A boy, maybe 11, stood in front of him, shouting something. Behind the boy were two other teens, laughing. One had a phone out. The other tossed a crushed soda, toward the man's feet. Kayla didn't hesitate. "Hey!" she shouted, storming toward them. "Leave him alone." The teens bolted. The man didn't move. Kayla knelt beside him. His face hadn't changed, blank, unshaken, but his hands, one still, were now shaking. She placed the food down gently. "They're cowards," she said softly. "Don't let them steal your peace." He said nothing, just looked at her. It was the first time their eyes truly met, and in that moment, she didn't see a homeless man. She saw a warrior who had forgotten how to fight for himself. She stood and stepped back. "Good night," she whispered. The next evening, she found a small rock placed beside her food container. Painted on it in shaky white letters was one word: "Thanks." Kayla cried the whole walk home. From that day on, she began writing to him. Notes tucked into napkins, small things. "Hope you're warm tonight. Clouds look like they'll snow. Someone cares that you're still here." He never wrote back, but he always placed a note inside the empty container. Folded neatly, never torn. It was a conversation, one without voices, but full of meaning. Meanwhile, Kayla's life grew harder. The diner cut her hours. No one needed braces. Rent went up again. Some nights. She skipped dinner. So no one wouldn't have to, but she never skipped that stop. Because somehow, that man's presence gave her strength she couldn't explain. Knowing he was still there, still enduring, reminded her to endure too. Then came the storm. A freak cold snap swept through New Mexico like a blade. Winds at 40 miles per hour. Power lines went down, schools closed, and the diner shut early. Snow fell thick, wet, and fast. Everyone told her to go straight home. But at 7:12, Kayla walked out with a thermos of chicken soup, gloves in her pocket, and her boots wrapped in warmth. The wind stung her cheeks, and her breath burned in her lungs as she made her way down the street, the grocery bags heavy in her hands. But she kept walking. When she reached the fence, he was still there. The blanket was pulled tight around him, his head bowed like a soldier in a trench holding the line. She approached slowly. "I brought soup," she said, but there was no reply. She crouched down, opened the thermos, and set it carefully on the ground. Then, without a word, she placed the gloves beside it. He didn't move. She studied him, really looked at him for the first time. And in that brief moment, it hit her, his posture, the way his eyes never wavered, the way he sat still. This wasn't a man who'd been broken. This was a man who had been trained not to break. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, "but I hope one day you remember." That night, her brother waited by the window until she came home. She was freezing, tired, but smiling because something had changed. She didn't know it yet, but across town, in that very moment, the man's breath quickened. His fingers twitched, and in the fog of his mind, broken, fractured, splintered, something sparked. A name, a rank, a memory. It wouldn't all come back at once, but it had begun, and the world would never be the same again. 3 nights after the storm, Fallridge returned to its usual routine. The streets were slushy, the power was back on, and the diner's neon sign buzzed, just as it always did. For most people, the cold snap had already become a distant memory, but not for Kayla Monroe. Her gloves were gone, left behind with the soup, and in their place was the word "remember" scrawled into the plastic lid. It haunted her more than she cared to admit. At the diner, She moved slower, smiled less. Her body worked, but her mind drifted constantly to the man by the fence, to the rock he had painted with the word thanks, to the fire in his eyes the night he stared back at her for the first time. She didn't see him for 3 days. Then Thursday night came. Kayla was on the late shift. The diner's cook, Marty, had called out, so she was manning both the grill and the front counter. Her hands ached from scrubbing pans, and her back throbbed, but she kept going. By 6:15 p.m., she had prepared a small meal, a grilled cheese sandwich, apple slices, and a flask of warm tea. She packed in the bag and tucked a note inside. "It's quiet without you. Hope you're okay." She finished her shift by 7 o'clock and clocked out, then started her usual walk down Elm Street. The sidewalk was still lined with dirty snow banks, the street lamps casting weak orange light over the slush and tire tracks. When she turned the corner to the fence, her heart sank. Empty. No blanket, no boots, no man. She stood there for a long time, clutching the bag, unsure what to do. Her breath came out in short clouds, her chest tight with worry. She glanced around. No one. Was he sick? Had he left? Had the cold taken him? 1,000 fears raced through her mind. She set the food down gently, tucking the bag between the boards of the fence to keep it dry. "Please be okay," she whispered, and turned to walk home. But before she reached the corner, a sound stopped her. A bang, then glass shattering, followed by the unmistakable crackle of fire. Kayla turned around, heart racing. Smoke was rising from the strip mall across from the diner. The old laundromat was on fire, the orange glow growing fast as it consumed the roof. She ran, her instincts kicking in. As she got closer, she saw a woman outside, screaming, "My daughter!" "She's inside." Without hesitation, Kayla dropped her bag and yanked open the front door. The heat hit her immediately, the smoke thick and stifling. Visibility was near zero. She crouched low, scanning the haze. Then she heard it, a faint, panic cough. "Hello," she shouted, her voice strained. "I'm coming." She moved between rows of machines, eyes burning, coughing. Near the last row, she found the girl, a small child, maybe 6 years old, curled into a ball behind a laundry basket. "It's okay, I've got you," Kayla said, scooping the girl up in her arms. She turned to run, but the exit was already blocked by a wall of flames. The ceiling above groaned. She ducked behind a row of washers, shielding the girl with her body. The fire crackled overhead. Plaster rained down. Kayla gasped for air, pulling her scarf over her nose, her vision blurry from the smoke. They weren't out yet. But somehow, Kayla knew she had to keep fighting for the girl, for the man who had given her the strength to keep moving forward. The air was blurred with smoke, then a deafening sound tore through the silence. Mail being ripped open, followed by a blast of cold air. A figure stepped through the smoke, tall and broad, moving with purpose. His boots stomped through the ash, a thick coat wrapped around him, and a hat pulled low over his eyes. He didn't speak. He just reached down, lifting Kayla with one arm and the child with the other, carrying them out into the snowy lot. Fresh air hit her lungs, and sirens howled in the distance. Kayla collapsed onto the pavement, the girl crying beside her. When she looked up, the man was gone. "Wait!" Kayla called out, coughing. "Who?" But he had already disappeared into the shadows. By the time the fire trucks arrived, there was no sign of him, only faint footprints in the snow leading back toward Elm Street. She knew those prints. The next day, Kayla returned to the fence, but there was nothing. No blanket, no food, no gloves, just silence. She came again that night. Still nothing. Then, on Sunday morning, as she was preparing for work, there was a knock at her apartment door. It wasn't Noah. He was still asleep. Kayla opened the door to find 2 men in suits. "Miss Monroe?" One asked, flashing government ID. "Do you know a man named Hayden Roth?" She blinked, confused. "No, I don't think so." The man exchanged a glance with his partner. "He says you saved his life." Kayla's knees nearly gave out. The men explained. 2 nights ago, a man collapsed on the steps of a VA hospital. No ID, no phone, barely coherent. But in his coat pocket was a rock painted with the word thanks, and a folded napkin with the words, "Someone cares that you're still here." He had been mumbling one name, Kayla. The world spun around her. The agent continued. We scanned his prints. That's when everything changed. General Hayden Roth, former commander of the Special Forces Group, was declared MIA 3 years ago during a covert operation in northern Syria. He was presumed dead after a helicopter crash. No wreckage, no survivors. A closed case until now. We found him, alive, disoriented, dehydrated, but alive. And somehow he remembered you. Kayla sat down, stunned. Her hands trembled. You're saying he was the man by the fence? The agent nodded. He's in stable condition now, asking for you. Kayla didn't know what to feel. Relief, guilt, awe. That night, she went to the hospital. When she walked into the room, she barely recognized him. Cleaned up, wearing a hospital gown, a 4 in one arm. But those eyes, still fierce, still quiet, met hers the moment she entered. He sat up straighter. You came, he said, his voice raspy but steady. Kayla swallowed hard. I didn't know your name. You didn't need to, he said softly. You remembered me when I didn't remember myself. Tears filled Kayla's eyes. They sat in silence for a while, until he finally looked at her and said, For months, you brought me back, one paper bag at a time. She couldn't speak. She just nodded. As she turned to leave, he lifted his hand, old and scarred but steady, and offered a salute. Kayla froze. Slowly, she placed her hand over her heart and smiled. Word of General Hayden Roth's reappearance spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, Fall Ridge, known for its quiet streets and small-town charm, was swarming with reporters, military vehicles, and whispers. Every diner booth had someone talking about it. They said he was dead 3 years ago. He was sitting by that fence all this time. You mean the girl with the food? That was her. Kayla didn't answer any questions. She kept working, kept bringing soup to customers and refilling coffee cups. But her world had tilted. 2 days after her visit to the hospital, Kayla received a phone call. Miss Monroe, this is Colonel David Harrow from the Department of Defense. General Roth would like to speak with you again. And if you're willing, we'd like to honor your role in his recovery. Kayla declined the ceremony. She didn't want the attention. She wasn't trying to be anyone's savior. But the colonel insisted they at least deliver something to her in person. That Friday, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the diner. The customers paused, silverware suspended midair as uniformed soldiers, decorated in crisp, stepped out in silence. One of them opened the rear door, and General Hayden Roth emerged in full dress uniform, clean-shaven, hair neatly cut, shoulders squared like he had never left command. He walked into the diner with the same deliberate, quiet focus he had used during 25 years of briefings. He stopped in front of Kayla, and the entire diner fell silent. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firm, "permission to stand at attention?" Kayla blinked. "What?" He straightened, raised his right hand, and saluted. Behind him, every soldier in the room did the same. Customers stood up. The cook emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands, confused. No one spoke. Tears welled up in Kayla's eyes. Roth lowered his hand. "You reminded a soldier who he was when the world forgot. You remembered when I couldn't. You fed me when I had nothing. You gave without asking." He stepped aside, and another soldier approached, holding a velvet box. Inside was a military challenge coin, custom-made. One side bore the insignia of Roth's unit, while the other was engraved with 5 words. For service without recognition. KM. Kayla stared at it, unable to breathe. "This," he said, "is from all of us, for all the nights you thought no one noticed." The soldiers turned and exited, leaving the diner in stunned silence. Roth looked back one last time. "I'll be in touch." Then he was gone. Kayla stood in the middle of the diner, holding the coin, tears streaming down her face. It was the only time she'd ever heard a room full of Fall Ridge residents go completely still. That night, as she walked past the fence, something caught her eye. The bench had been cleaned, a fresh coat of varnish applied, and a small plaque now adorned it. It read, "This spot once held a soldier. This spot once held a friend. This spot will always hold respect." Kayla sat down, watching the sunset. There was no paper bag tonight, no gloves, no soup, just a girl and a memory, and a man who now remembered everything. A week after Roth's visit, Fallridge wasn't the same. The diner was busier than ever, but this time it wasn't with reporters. It was with veterans, young, old, retired, active duty. Some came in uniform, others with their families. All of them asked the same question. Is this where she gave him food? They didn't want attention. They just wanted coffee, a good moment, and a seat near the window where General Hayden Roth had once sat in silence. Kayla quietly renamed the booth. No sign, no ceremony, just a folded napkin, a clean plate, and a note tucked under the edge of the table, reserved for forgotten. Then one morning, she arrived at the diner to find something taped to the front door, a printed letter, a photo, and a name in bold, Lieutenant General Hayden Roth. The letter explained that Roth had requested to use a portion of his military pension to establish something he called the KM Initiative, a private grant for civilians who had shown acts of sustained kindness to veterans in need. Quiet help, no cameras, no recognition. Kayla was listed as its first recipient. The grant covered Noah's schooling, paid off debt, and gave her a sense of peace. But that wasn't what made her cry. What made her cry was the second envelope inside. Her gloves, cleaned, repaired, and folded neatly, with a note. You remembered me. Now I remember you. You brought me back. Now I'll never forget. HR! That Sunday, the town held a quiet gathering. No speeches, no marching band. Just a few folding chairs, a podium, and the townspeople who had once whispered about the girl and the ghost by the fence. Colonel Harrow spoke briefly, then stepped aside. From the back of the crowd, General Roth emerged, dressed in full uniform, with rows of soldiers and veterans behind him, forming a full honor guard. They lined up in front of the old fence, now fully restored. Roth took his place at the center and, before all of Fallridge, saluted the bench. No one spoke. Then, slowly, one by one, every soldier raised their hand in salute point one by one. The townspeople stood, the cook, the mechanic, the school principal, even Mrs. Collins, Kayla's cranky landlord. They faced the bench and saluted. Later that week, Kayla sat on the bench again, watching the sunset, just as she always had. But now, the world felt warmer. A child passed by, holding her mother's hand. The child pointed and asked, "Mom, is that where the nice lady fed the soldier?" The mother nodded. Kayla smiled. She didn't need a medal. She didn't need a headline. She had a memory, a coin, a bench, and a man who had once been forgotten but was now remembered by everyone. Because sometimes you don't have to save the world. You just have to save one person long enough for the world to find them again, and that is enough. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.